right, so we're going to pick up on example 6, which is Pythagorean identities. So these are a couple of identities that can help you when you're finding different things. So here you've got sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta equals 1. That's probably the most popular one. Then you have 1 plus tangent squared theta is secant squared theta. And cotangent squared theta plus 1 equals cosecant squared theta. So let's see what we have here. So this says given sine of theta, and that theta is an acute angle, find the value of cosine. So understand we're probably going to be with number 1. All right, we're probably going to be with this number 1. Again, I have sine, I want cosine. This is the one with sine and cosine in it. So how do you know which one you're using? It's all based on what you're given. All based on what you're given and what you want to find. So let's go ahead and write it out. We have that sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta equals 1. Now sine of theta is 1/2. We want sine squared theta. We don't know cosine, and we still have equal to 1. 1/2 times 1/2 is 1/4. Just copying everything up. Oops. Else down. That's a theta. I'm going to write 1 as 4/4. Because 4/4 is 1. The reason I did that is because I'm about to subtract 1/4 from both sides. So when I subtract 1/4 from both sides, I've got 4/4 minus 1/4 is 3/4. Now to undo a square, we're going to square root. So we got cosine of theta is the square root of 3/4, sorry, plus or minus. And that's why they said an acute angle. We want that positive. So we're going to have positive, we're going to have square root of 3, and then square root of 4, which is just 2. So there's my cosine of theta. And again, from this, you can find lots of different things. You can find, you could have said cosecant was 2. You can find secant. You can find tangent now. So you can find everything now. All right, moving on. Using a calculator. Now, I want you to definitely know the difference between degrees. So this one's in degrees. And radians. There are buttons on your calculator. So the calculator that I posted, there's a button that says degrees and radians, and when you click it, it slides back and forth. So make sure when you're in degrees, you would type in exactly as you see it, sine 72.8, make sure it's in degrees, and you should get to the nearest, or to 4 decimal places, 0.9553. Again, make sure your calculator is on degrees, and you should be fine. Now here, notice there's no degree symbol. We're talking in terms of radians here. Also, they added in another doozy. This is cosecant. So cosecant goes with sine. Remember, it's 1 over the sine of 1.5. So when you type it in your calculator, again, make sure you're in radians. Make sure you're in radians, and you would do 1 divided by sine of 1.5. And to the nearest 4 decimal places, we get 1.0025. So again, make sure your calculator's in radians. 1 divided by sine of 1.5. Cosecant goes with sine. And that's just how to use your calculator, making sure you can type them in. So pay attention to if it's degrees or radians, because you will have to toggle back and forth. And then use your reciprocal properties when you have to. So coming back to where these things are used, you probably did a lot of word problems back in geometry when you were learning SOHCAHTOA. So when I teach them, I always teach my students to label your hypotenuse, give it an H. Label your opposite, give it an O. And your adjacent. And then pay attention, so when you're talking about sine, cosine, and tangent, SOHCAHTOA, When you're talking about sine, cosine, and tangent, to figure out which one to use, you look at what you're given and what you need. So we're given adjacent, and we need the opposite. So opposite and adjacent, I'm using tangent. So we don't need the hypotenuse, we don't care about it, so we're definitely not using sine or cosine. All right, so look at what you're given and look at what you need. All right, so we're tangent of your angle, which has a degree here, equals opposite over adjacent. So opposite, I'm going to call this x because I don't like writing a's. They look like 9s. Over adjacent. Now this is x divided by 750, so if I want to get x alone, I'm going to multiply both sides by 750. So we're here, 750 times the tangent of 24, and here those will cancel out for us. Now, we are in degrees, so make sure your calculator's in degrees, and you would type in exactly what you see here, 750 times the tangent of 24, and it says what is the distance. It doesn't tell us to round, so let's say to the nearest 10. I got 333.9, and it would be yards. All right, 333.9 yards. Now, I always teach my geometry students that make sure your answer makes sense. So let's do a little quick math here. 180 degrees in a triangle. And we've already used, I think, oh, there it is. We've already used 90 and 24, so go ahead and subtract those from 180. You get that angle B has to be 66 degrees. So understand your smallest angle should be across from your smallest side. So notice 24 is my smallest angle, which means this has to be my shortest side. So before I started this problem, I should know that my answer has to be less than 750. So if this is my smallest angle, this is my smallest side, I knew my answer had to be less than 750 before I started. So it's just good, definitely to check and make sure that your answer makes sense. If you found a hypotenuse, remember your hypotenuse always has to be the longest side. So just some food for thought if you're ever checking your answers or if you want to make sure your answer makes sense. Definitely it'll catch if you accidentally use sine instead of cosine or something. It usually catches those, or if you accidentally flip-flopped and put 750 over x. Usually you can catch it if you make sure that your answer makes sense. Okay? And last but not least, oh no, there's no picture. So sometimes you have to draw your own pictures. So a flagpole is 14 meters tall. We've got a flagpole. Yeah, don't mind my drawings. It's 14 meters tall. It casts a shadow that's 10 meters long. So a shadow's on the ground. Here's your ground. Here's my wiggly shadow. Is 10 meters long. Find the angle of elevation. So elevation is always looking up. So looking up to the sun. There's your angle of elevation. We're going to call it theta. Angle of depression would be looking down. So if you're like in a helicopter looking down at the sharks in the ocean, you would have an angle of depression looking down. All right, so let's find that angle. So we're still going to set it up the same way. We're going to label our pieces. We have opposite. We have adjacent. And again, there's nothing here for the hypotenuse. So in terms of SOHCAHTOA, we've got opposite and adjacent. We're going to be using tangent. Opposite and adjacent, we're using tangent. So tangent of my angle equals opposite over adjacent. Now, if we want to find our angle, we can't just divide by the word tangent. So if you look on your calculator, right below, I think, tangent of theta should be tangent inverse of theta, tangent to the -1. So what that actually does, it's kind of like squaring and square rooting cancel each other out. Tangent and tangent inverse cancel each other out. So you would actually take the tangent inverse of both sides. And what will happen is you'll be left with theta equals. And this is what you want to type in your calculator. Again, make sure you're in degrees because we're still working in degrees here. Tangent inverse. And then in those parentheses, 14 divided by 10. Close them and you should get, this says to the nearest degree. So a degree is a whole number, 54 degrees. All right, I believe that is it. So go ahead and get that work done. Make sure you show all your work.